was super excited to be on my way here. I saw the bus across the street. I was like, I can make it. I can definitely make it. So I started running with my backpack and I think it was actually this outfit, running to catch the bus. I'm not an athlete. I tripped. I fell, I tumbled, I scraped my knee. Several other commuters stopped, concerned, wanted to help me. The pity of strangers. I got on the bus driver was like, oh my God, are you okay? I would have waited. I'm like, it's fine. I realized once I sit down on the bus that I have scraped my knee open horribly. So I show up to my first day of work here at UW with like a blood-soaked pant leg. I go to the people in my office pod. I go to Jeanette and say, hi, do you have any Band-Aids? Just an abysmal start to my teaching career. But what did my immune system do when I scraped my knee on the very dirty streets of Seattle? Right, here's my ouch, here's my cut from running to catch the bus. Here's some little bacteria that were, something was surely living on the streets of Seattle. And those get in because of those ouch, because of that cut. What's happening? Infection, probably. Not immediately, because what did we say about infection? Infection requires that the pathogen is replicating within you. So within the first, 5-second roll, immediately I'm not infected by whatever has ended up in my scraped knee. Rhea? Absolutely. So what Rhea says is that the white blood cells that are circulating and controlling in my skin are going to bump up against the bacteria that have just been introduced. The PRRs are going to bind the PAMPs, and they're going to start releasing cytokines and calling other immune cells to that area. And what does that look like? Immediately, when the macrophages, let's focus on one of our cell types. When macrophages bind the PAMPs on the bacteria that just got into my knee, they're going to attack. Because bacteria is a small pathogen, what mechanism of attack do you think this macrophage might use? Yeah, Rhea. Phagocytosis, absolutely. It's going to do the hug of death, glom around that bacteria, bring it into a lysosome, and break it up so it's got all of that information, the wanted posters that it can make to show the adaptive immune system what's going on.
And it just spits it out?
It doesn't actually just spit it out. It takes the information back to the lymph node. So it's going to travel through the lymphatic vessels that we've been talking about today and take the information back to the adaptive cells that live in the lymph nodes and transfer that information so that your adaptive system knows what to prepare for. But yeah, so it attacks immediately. It also sends out histamine and other signaling molecules to recruit and inform your body of the intruder. Histamine. Does anybody recognize the word histamine?
Hista is like flesh.
There were so many words there. That was great. One at a time.
Hista is like flesh, bioscientific vocab class.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Hista is like flesh, or the root.
So histamine, has anybody ever taken an antihistamine? Yeah.
For allergies.
Yeah, for allergies. It's like your Zyrtec, your Claritin, your Benadryl even, right? So antihistamines are meant to tamp down an inflammatory reaction, which means that histamines are causing the inflammatory reaction. So here we have harmful things entering the body. It's going to result in inflammation. It's pain, warmth, swelling, redness, which is what I had by the time it was 1 p.m. and we were teaching this class. And my knee was swollen because the innate immune cells had gotten right to work, secreting histamine, secreting cytokines, other signaling molecules to recruit not really the adaptive immune cells yet, to recruit other innate immune cells to come in and deal with the rest of the bacteria that had been introduced into the wound. So any and all pathogen-associated molecular patterns that innate cells have, when those are bound, they release histamine, causing inflammation, and other fever-inducing small molecules. Any and all PAMPs. We did say that certain types of PAMPs can induce certain types of responses, and that is true. It can tell your adaptive immune system this is a virus versus this is a bacteria. But any of them, regardless of what they are going to cause inflammation. This histamine is a constant. All right, inflammation. Let's define inflammation. Inflammation is triggered by the release of cytokines that are produced immediately after pathogen recognition. And inflammation is 4 things: redness, pain, swelling, and heat. Has anybody ever sprained an ankle, broken a foot? I see hands. Anybody familiar with the RICE method? Yeah. Rest, ice, compression, and elevate. Let's go through each of those one by one and think about how it might help us with inflammation. Rest. How is rest going to help with inflammation? Yep, Jacob.
Conserving energy.
Conserving energy, so your body has more energy to deal with the pathogens or with the inflammation caused by a broken bone. Alex?
Maybe like decrease further injury.
Decrease further injury? Absolutely. Every time you step on a broken bone, you're agitating, you're drawing more inflammation to the space. What about ice?
With heat. Well,
Heat, yeah. You want to decrease the heat, Rhea? Sorry, Rhea, once more. Yeah, you want to reduce the swelling with ice. So ice is going to also, things move faster at higher temperatures. So when you apply ice and you cool the temperature down, you're kind of you're leaching some of that energy out. So they have less, kind of slows down this migration event. It slows down all of the blood rushing into that area. What about compression? Compression and elevation, I'm going to bundle. How are compression and elevation going to help alleviate inflammation? Yeah.
It reduces blood flow to the spot of injury.
Reduces blood flow. What other kind of flow is affected? Lymphatic. Bingo. So I mentioned that the lymphatic system is not driven by your heart pumping, right? So you need to compress and elevate so that the lymph fluid, the interstitial fluid that is building up at that location, will be kind of squished like a toothpaste tube. You're squishing it back towards the lymph nodes, away from that inflamed area. And same with the elevation. You're letting gravity do some of the work of moving the lymph back towards the center of your body. Yeah, Alan.
so why would inflammation happen when it's like an internal injury, like breaking your bone?
Why does inflammation happen when there's an internal injury, like breaking a bone? So we mentioned PAMPs. I briefly mentioned DAMPs. Do you remember what DAMPs stand for? Yeah, Alex?
Damage-associated molecular patterns.
Damage-associated molecular patterns. So your macrophages, your phagocytic cells, do not only respond to pathogens being present, but also to damage. They're the janitors of the immune system, the Pac-Man janitors. And they're also going to any damaged cells, any broken cells, they're going to come up and clean out that debris, and that makes room for new cells to have room to develop and fill that space. You need platelets coming in to stop any blood clotting that is released by vessel breaking at the site of the bone break. Right, so there's all of this other aspects of inflammation are happening even when you don't have a pathogen that you're responding to.
So then does the RICE method just reduce, like, the immune system's response, or what?
The immune system is incredibly strong. It is not going to be stopped by a little bit of ice. It does help you from going overboard. It also just helps with the pain, right? But the elevation, being able, especially something like your foot, that lymphatic fluid, that interstitial fluid, has a hard time moving against gravity. So elevating, that helps move the lymph back to the lymph nodes so that it can do all the filtering that it has to do. All right. In inflammation, we have something called vasodilation. So bacteria trigger macrophages, or other phagocytic cells, right, to release cytokines and chemokines. That's our first step here. Here's your macrophage eating a bacteria, releasing cytokines. those signaling molecules move into the lymphatic and circulatory system. And this results in vasodilation. Does anybody know what vasodilation means? Yeah, Rhea? Yeah, when the blood vessels dilate, right? So get bigger, they kind of spread out. We'll have an activity about that in a second. And increased vascular permeability. That's increased permeability in the vessels. And that causes the redness, heat, and swellings. Now that has opened up so much more room for the contents of the lymphatic vessels and the blood vessels to move into the affected area. And then inflammatory cells can migrate into that tissue, releasing further inflammatory mediators that cause pain. So it kind of turns into a bit of a feed-forward cycle. All right, I'd like to do an activity on vasodilation. I will need 3 volunteers. You will have to touch hands with the other volunteers, so only volunteer if that's something you're comfortable with. I see one, Carter. Come on up to the front. 2 more. Jacob.
How do I spell sweet?
1 more. Let me do a little dance up here by myself. All right, I shall be the 3rd volunteer. All right, so y'all are gonna be the cells. You are next to each other in the blood vessel, keeping the blood where it's supposed to be. You have what is called cell junctions. So you can go now, like face each other. Go like this. That's your cell junction. All right.
Getting past this iron tight.
Yeah, that's really hard to get past. If I'm a macrophage migrating around and I suddenly see a cytokine over there, it's really hard for me to get through this. That's really difficult.
The power of the bromance, the DAPA cannot be stopped.
The power of the bromance. Sure, cell junctions brought to you by bromance. All right. Now, histamine and other inflammatory mediators are released, and that causes vasodilation. So now, you're going to put your hands like this. Yeah. So now the cell vessels are still in place. They're still keeping things going where they're supposed to be. But now, if I, the macrophage, sense inflammation on the other side, it's a lot easier for me to bust past to get where it needs to go, right? And that's the idea behind why histamine and other inflammatory mediators cause vasodilation. Thank you so much, guys.
Wow.